to talk about that is Axel Caballero, founder, director, and producer of Cuentame, a campaign from Brave New Foundation. Thank you for being with us. So my first question to you is, what leverage does Obama have to tout achievements with the Latino community, as he did today, when he hasn't delivered on immigration reform, as he promised, when Latino unemployment is in the double digits, and when reports show a record number of immigrants have been deported under his watch?
It's a very difficult situation that he's in, and it's an uphill battle for sure. The problem that we're facing is a stalemate. It's a stalemate on immigration reform. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to push for it. There's absolutely no leadership in either Congress or at the executive level. And so he's going to have a hard time convincing Latinos that, in fact, his record is a positive one. Having said that, though, there are some other positive steps that have been taken. I think the advances on the DREAM Act particularly have been substantial over the last couple years. Even though we haven't reached one, there's certainly positive steps towards one.
Now, Obama today said that some believe that he should do more himself to do something about immigration reform, and the audience cheered, and he said that's not how government works, and he kind of blamed Republicans for the stalls to immigration reform. Is that a cop-out? Should he be doing more?
Well, there should be leadership on the issue, and I think that that's what the Latino community is really speaking out on, is that there's a lack of leadership. Nobody wants to take the responsibility to do it. They see in immigration reform a political potato hot potato that nobody wants to handle. And so when President Obama says to the Latino constituents that to make him, we respond by saying, okay, we're going to make you. We're definitely putting the pressure, but you have to take leadership. You have to do it every day and every month and every week. Because if we only hear it when he's courting the Latino vote, that's going to be his main challenge and his main problem.
Is Raza working against their own interests? Because analysts say that they pretty overwhelmingly support the White House's message on any number of issues and lobby for those. So is that against their best interest? Should they not be giving so much support to the Obama White House?
Well, I think they're threading a fine line, and I think what they're doing is really working both angles. I mean, their constituents and their supporters really favor a strong immigration reform. But in order to achieve that, they have to be cordial with this White House, because they need to keep the pressure on both at the constituent level, at the grassroots level, but also at the level of the government. They can alienate the White House by saying, you're not doing anything, and so therefore we're going to stand back. They need to work with the White House, and I think that that's what they're doing. Certainly there's other organizations that aren't taking that stance, but you know, we do have to remember that there is a Congress that is absolutely blocking everything that we see. And it's funny that we hear the GOP constantly saying, it's like President Obama's going to have a very hard time convincing Latino voters. Well, that's preaching temperance from a bar stool, because the GOP has done absolutely everything in their ways and means to oppose any advance on either the DREAM Act or immigration reform.
You know, it's interesting, though. Obama said today that as a result of the stalls in immigration reform, that more and more states are taking matters into their own hands, which we've seen with a number of immigration laws passed at the state level, which he said is not the right thing to do. But what are states supposed to do if they're waiting around for the federal government to act and the government is not?
Well, the states, what they need to do is take into account a comprehensive immigration reform approach. What cannot happen is these interests, this extra interest that we're having, the big money interest and big private prison interest and big anti-immigration interest pushing for these individual laws across the states. That's what's filling the void, and that's the challenge that we as organizations and as the Latino community have ahead of us, is to push against those filling that void. And so in essence, what we're seeing is sweeping reform across states that are being influenced by big money interests. That is where the immigration reform stalls.
But Sorry, I didn't mean to step on your tongue. Does an organization like Raza, though, have a vested financial interest? Obama's director of intergovernmental affairs from the very beginning was previously Raza's senior vice president in charge of research, advocacy, and legislation. And during her tenure at the White House, it's coincided with a sharp increase in federal funding for Raza. That's according to a recent Judicial Watch investigation. So does that solidify the group's advocacy for Obama's positions?
Well, in the role that La Raza is playing is a very delicate role, because at the same time that they're working with the White House to come out with the strongest strategy, they still have a very strong constituents that's demanding action. So eventually La Raza, what they're going to have to do is to answer to their constituents. And that's the first and foremost approach that they need to take. That is certainly what other organizations are doing, is listening to their supporters and pressuring strongly for that. Again, to reinstate is that what is going to be really hard is to alienate the White House. We already have, as far as immigration reform, a Congress that is not working on that issue. So therefore, we need to continue that pressure.
And we will see if that pressure results in any results on immigration reform. Thank you for giving us your analysis of what all went down today.
Thank you so much for having me on.